Hello. I'm going to be looking at the role of a designer, and in order to help me explore that role, I've decided to design something. Now, a designer is a person who plans a communication through a sensory medium, and basically what that means is they communicate using one of the senses such as sight or taste, touch, smell and sound. Um, so I decided to look at four of these senses: sight, sound, touch, and taste, and try and design something for each of them to communicate a given idea. I decided not to do smell because it's rather awkward to deal with. It's not something which most people are used to communicating through, at least consciously. Um, and so it would just be too difficult, and obviously I won't be able to create anything, though that the idea isn't actually to create anything, because then that's taking it beyond the design. But anyway, so the first sense I looked at was sight. Through sight I wanted to communicate the idea of unity. So my first thoughts were, okay, so how am I going to make this? What am I going to make? I'm going to make an image. Obviously it's got to be something you can see. So an image seemed quite logical. But then would I be doing something digital or traditional, like with paints or collage? So that's something I had to think about. Then I went on to think about how you can express unity. So for the images that are associated with unity. Now unity is about several people coming together as one, and sort of like everyone sort of getting along, and they're all in it together. So a circle is often used to communicate that, and also like the image of people holding hands, showing that they're together. So thinking about like colours. Typically it would be quite light. Unity is often associated with peace, and the two can be interchangeable, and as it turns out in the image, it could be used either to communicate unity or peace. So yeah, peace signs and the icon of a dove also helps symbolize unity. Also like a tree, it helps communicate it, and like people laying down weapons, or people coming together like a group high five, and sort of the idea of things being intertwined or woven together, like several smaller things all coming together to create one bigger, stronger object. So I thought about all these ideas, and I made a rough photo manipulation as a sort of a final piece, I guess. Perhaps more of a work in progress since it isn't that refined. Which I'll post a link to. One sec. The next sense I looked at is the sense of sound. With sound, I wanted to communicate the idea of anger. So very different to the last one, and that's why I wanted a bit of diversity. So like heavy metal is often associated with anger, because music is used as a way of expressing your emotions. So heavy metal I think is going to be an influence, but I don't want to focus just on that, mainly because I don't have a band or access to enough instruments to create a heavy metal track, nor do I have that much knowledge. I do know a bit about making electronical tracks, and so that's probably where I'm going to take this, even if it's only a short piece. But some of the sounds are associated with anger. I mean, obviously things like shouting, and sort of arguing and things like that. But the human voice is a very good way of communicating ideas through sound, because it's very easy to interpret. I mean, you hear a sound, and you don't necessarily know what that means straight away. So it does help when you've got a person there, they're speaking to you, because speech is something which more or less everyone can understand, except for obviously the barriers of language and stuff. But yeah, other sounds associated with anger, quite sort of industrial sounds, not very human sounds, sounds of destruction, hard surfaces being hit or broken, like if you were to smash a hammer against a window, or bang a piece of metal, they're all quite aggressive sounds. I was also thinking about, like, so what's the difference between anger and aggression? So after doing a bit of research and thinking about it, anger is morely emotion, and aggression is how that emotion is played out. So yeah, in this case, in the case of the track I'm going to be making, it could be either, since essentially they are the same thing. After looking at sound, I decided to look at the sense of touch, and the idea I wanted to communicate through touch is the idea of innocence. Now I want, like, with each of the different pieces that I'm designing, I want it to be just relevant to that sense. It can be relevant to other senses, but specifically to that sense. It's like with touch, like, imagine there's a person who can't see, who can't hear, he can't smell, and he can't touch, taste even, but he has got feeling. Like he can feel things, and that's like how I wanted to take this, because obviously innocence is commonly associated with like white and purity, but that's far more of a visual thing, whereas I wanted to create a physical thing, something you can touch, you can feel. So then I had to sort of think about what kind of objects and what kind of textures are associated with innocence. Young children and babies is one example, as are like lambs or rabbits, often associated with innocence, and sort of purity. That's another big thing with innocence. It's got to be about purity. As for textures, like soft textures, textures such as silk or sheepskin, things that are very nice to touch, and they haven't been corrupted at all. They're just very pure. So I need to give a bit of thought about what I'm going to be designing for innocence. Potentially an item of child's clothing. But I don't know yet. The next sense I wanted to look at is taste. And through taste I want to communicate the idea of celebration. So I thought, what kind of tastes are associated with celebration? Also there's like parties. Like I thought back to when I was a child, and sort of parties you went to, and they always had like all the food laid out, and there's all the sort of fizzy drinks, and there was jelly and ice cream, crisps and donuts, and all that kind of thing. That is quite associated with celebration, but for this I wanted to think of a more specific group of people, mainly adults, maybe 10 or 20 of them, so either designing a meal or a menu plan. And so that made me think of more traditional foods, so things like roast dinners, and caviar, and drinks such as wine or champagne, and just how everything should sort of be in abundance, in order to communicate celebration. So yeah, I'm going to give it a little bit of thought, and I'll see how it goes.